Sony mirrorless cameras are some of the best selling cameras for good reason. The main thing that got me to buy one was the compact performance. Just look at this size comparison. Here's my old camera and the Sony camera. But there's more to choose in a camera. So here I'll explore pretty much everything you'd need to consider before buying a Sony mirrorless camera. Timestamps are in the video description. If you're in a rush, skip to the most relevant parts. When deciding on which camera to buy, a great place to start is by thinking about what's important to you when you're capturing video or images. For Sony mirrorless cameras, their main strengths are autofocus, portability, and the sensor. And their weaknesses are the ergonomics or usability, IBIS, and video codecs. I'll be going into more details on each of these later on in the video, but first, the most important thing, lenses. Back in 2016 when I bought my A6300, there were hardly any Sony lenses to choose from, but we've come a long way and right now there's a wide selection of lenses. This is due to Sony focusing on mirrorless cameras far earlier on compared to most of the big competitors like Canon or Nikon. Right now in 2021, there's a good selection of third-party lenses from Sigma and Tamron, which are generally cheaper than the Sony lenses. To get the best autofocus performance, the Sony lenses seem to be more optimized. Something which I find disappointing is the effort that Sony put into developing APS-C lenses. There are a few good ones, and I definitely use them, but compared to someone like Fuji, the APS-C line of lenses just don't compare. Full-frame lenses seem to be the focus, probably due to the increased profits compared to APS-C. For full-frame, you can get every zoom lens from wide to telephoto, and some great prime lenses too. Something which people hardly talk about is the relatively small diameter of the Sony E Mount. This means that lenses can be more compact. This is good for saving weight, but for IBIS, this limits the performance, which is why many cameras with large diameter mounts like the Canon RF mount or the Panasonic L mount have better IBIS. Sony is quite a big company, so they can afford to buy a lot of the best sensors before the competition get their hands on them, which is one of the reasons why a lot of their sensors are some of the best in the photography industry. All of their sensors are backside illuminated, giving them great low light performance and a high dynamic range. For photos, this is great as your images will come out clean at higher ISOs, and you can recover a lot of detail with the dynamic range. This was a huge advantage I noticed when switching from the Canon 7D to the Sony A6300. One thing to note is that Sony seem to be doing some processing to their raw image files. If you're doing astrophotography, you'll notice this through some faint stars disappearing compared to other cameras. It's a minor thing, but other manufacturers like Fuji or Canon don't do this with low light images. But this does not mean that Sonys can't take great astrophotos. Some of my best Milky Way photos are taken with the A6300. The video quality coming out of Sony cameras was one of the main reasons why I bought the A6300. It offered oversampled video from the full sensor, so that's 6K down to 4K, with great video autofocus. At the time, that was industry leading for a mirrorless camera, but right now Sony is far behind the competition, just offering 4K 30fps at 8-bit, and most of the competitors are at least at 4K 10-bit. Going back to 2016 when I first bought my camera, and Sony was in the front of the pack for mirrorless video, the competition noticed that and they were slowly adding more features like 10-bit and 4K at higher frame rates to their cameras, but Sony just kept their video options at the same level, not progressing. Until now, still almost every camera from Sony offers 4K 30fps 8-bit, except for the Sony a7S III and the Alpha 1. For video autofocus, they're definitely top 2 with Canon, but for video codecs, they're pretty far behind from pretty much every company. So, should you buy a Sony mirrorless camera? Well, I'll break this down into two sections, the APS-C line and the full frame line. I'm just going to be doing this in bullet points to really make this concise. Starting with APS-C, the main strengths are pretty much the most compact, high quality imaging setup, great autofocus, basic video, and why you shouldn't buy Sony APS-C. If you need professional lenses, there's not much to choose from. If you're planning to use the camera as a long-term investment, say you plan on keeping it more than 3 years. Also, if you want advanced video features, you're going to be disappointed with the Sony APS-C lineup. And for full frame, the benefits are some of the best battery life out of any mirrorless cameras, top of the line image quality, and professional lenses are available at pretty much every focal length, and the compact body, of course. The weaknesses are the IBIS, which is not as good as Canon's and Panasonic's. Again, the advanced video features, apart from the A7S III and the Alpha 1. Sony mirrorless cameras are definitely here to stay. For photos, they're doing well, but for video, they definitely need to catch up with the competition. This is one of the reasons why I got the Pocket 4K for video, but I still use my A6300 for photos, and it's been great. Hopefully this came in useful to help you decide on whether or not you should buy a Sony mirrorless camera.